So welcome, my name's Ben Barr, I'm the Executive Director of the Rainbow Community Center, and this is...
I'm Summer Selick. Most of you know me because I'm the attorney in Contra Costa County, but I also am the Community Outreach Liaison at RCC.
So Summer has started to work for the Rainbow Center, and one of her first projects is to put together a speaker series for our organization. And so this is kind of our very first speaking event, and we're really pleased at the turnout and really want to welcome you. And for those of you who don't know, the Rainbow Center has been around since 1992 and as an independent nonprofit since 1996. But we've actually only had the majority of our programs, professional programs, for about the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. We now have programs that's really spanned the life, kind of the lifespan of LGBT people. So in any given month, the youngest person who comes in our center is 12. The oldest person is 92. Wow. And we see about 500 people a month who come through the center. And this little room that we are in is our mostly our community space. So 3 days a week it's a youth program. 1 day a week it's a food pantry. 1 day a week it's a senior lunch program. And then in the evenings it's support groups, recovery groups, and lots of other things. So we're a small space, but we are really working to try to do more to serve the LGBT community. So now you know where we are. I really hope that you'll come back. Hope you'll become a volunteer or find some other way to continue to be involved with our center. So our first speaker, and I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to introduce Sherry Berman to you. And Sherry has been, I've known Sherry for how long now? 6 or 7 years, and when she first walked into the Rainbow Center and has gotten involved in a variety of ways. She's basically been a consultant for nonprofit organizations. She's worked with high-tech corporations, in university career centers, with people who are dealing with substance abuse and substance abuse recovery, as well as reform convicts. And in all those populations, she's worked with people around career issues and career counseling. She's also been a consultant to the Rainbow Center and helped us work on our career
hiring,
and many other things as well. And she's been a board member, just stepped off of the board. She's been a board member here for 5 years and really helped us move forward as an organization with a really strong board. And she's recently published in Curve magazine on LGBT career issues. And with that, and what I'm holding in my hand is her great book that's called Inside Job, which is a book that she's written about career development, as well as is part of a workshop series that she teaches on really how do you find the right career for you. And hopefully you'll talk a little more about what you do. All right, and with that, I give you Sherry Berman.
Thank you. Woo! Okay, I want you to say 2 words that came to your mind when you just sat down like this and looked at you. What do you think?
Hard to see from the back.
Hard to see me. Okay. What else did you think? I just sat there for a couple seconds.
Surprised.
You were surprised? What else did you think?
No podium.
A podium. What else did you think?
Powerful.
Calm.
Powerful and commanding.
Thank you. I like that. Silence.
What are you doing?
Everybody has perceived biases. And that was just my way of showing you that. The brain is an amazing thing. It automatically goes to a negative place. So part of what I do with people is I work with them on understanding their thinking. Because you take yourself wherever you go. Did you know that? You can change jobs, you can change sexes, you can go wherever you go, you take yourself with you. So that's why it's important to understand how the brain works. So when you walk into a new environment, place you've never been before, do you know what the very first thing is that you do? You scan for danger. This is instinctive. It is built into the human condition. We are always looking for danger. And so we are always in some way prepared for something that might happen to us. Now, we do this for a really healthy reason. Even though we are two-legged people and we look really sophisticated and we act really smart, we've got thumbs, we're still animals. Okay? And so animals are always worried about their survival and protection. Now, there is something that calms down their survival instinct, and that's called bonding. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So when you walk into a small room for a job interview, that is a really scary place. How many people like job interviews? Oh, come on. When you're done with this, I'm hoping you'll change your mind. See, I always think of job interviews as a party thrown on my behalf. But I've been doing this a long time, and I've been on both sides. I've been preparing people, I've been interviewing people, so for me it's natural, it's fun. But the truth is that when we walk into an interview situation, we're usually in our reptilian brain. We're scared and we are protected, and we have a lot of biases about the employer. And the employer, by the way, is feeling much of the same way. I know you don't think that's true, but it is. The employer is desperate to find someone who's going to help his tribe or her tribe, to help the people inside the tribe, and to help serve the people that his tribe, his business, is trying to help or serve or make money off of. And so, believe it or not, their reptilian brain is going also. And so everybody's in there thinking about protecting themselves, and the truth is what really needs to happen is that everybody needs to think in terms of how can we help each other. Do you buy any of this so far?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the truth is, there's a lot of bias going on, and a lot of it is instinctual, and a lot of it is innocent, and a lot of it is unconscious. So for this preparation, I kind of broke down biases into two different formats. And you know, this is up for discussion. It's the first time I've given a lecture on this perspective, and we may come up with 5 or 6 biases. But the way I see it right now, in an interview situation, there's usually 2 types of built biases. There's the reptilian brain, and this is the brain which is scared, right? This is the brain that's like not sure what's going to happen and using a lot of caution, and so they're judging you, but more from a protective place. And then there's the ignorant bias, otherwise known as the idiot bias. And these are people who actually never leave their animal brain, and they have no desire to, and they're bigots, and they're the people who it doesn't really matter what you say or what you do, they're going to judge you. Those are the people. So I get asked this question a lot. What do I do about prejudice during the interview? Not much. I'm sorry, it exists. I've been talking to employers for 26 years, and you know what? Most of them really do. And a lot of them are prejudiced, and a lot of them don't like to hire black people, and they don't like to hire overweight people, and they don't like to hire gay people, and it exists. There's nothing I can tell you to change your mind. And there's nothing that you can do to change their mind in an interview. So, what do we do about this? Well, as I said before, there's only one consistent thing in every situation you walk into, and what is that? You. So the idea, what I want to do is just give you some tips on how you take care of yourself and show up the best that you can be. And then we'll talk about the people who live in their ignorant brain at the end, what to do with them, besides hurting them. The idea is that when you go into an interview situation, your primary goal is going to be foster bonding. Do you know who employers hire? They hire people they like. I'm sorry, it comes down to that simple. Resumes are great. Being able to answer the questions in an interview is wonderful. But the truth is, if there's not a connection, they're not going to hire you. I've seen, I literally watched employers hiring for, as I said, a long time. And they make decisions based on how comfortable they feel with you. And can you adapt to their environment and provide? That's what they're looking for. Of course, now, you're in the interview, and you're shaking a little bit, and your palms are sweating, and you're scared, right? And you're saying, be calm, be calm, be calm. And it looks like the tide is against you. As you walk in, and you think the employer has all of the power. I'm going to tell you something. That's not true. Employers need you just as much, if not more than you need them. And if you ask people, this is correct. Anybody who's done hiring will tell you that they are usually in a pretty desperate place to bring on good people into the environment. So how do you keep yourself calm without drugs? So this is a little piece that I teach from the book. And it's all about moods. Okay? So I'm going to teach you about moods in interviewing. Believe it or not, it's essential. There are 3 primary moods. And we all fluctuate through these moods probably 100 times during the day. And we do it without realizing it. But when you're walking into an interview and you want to overcome that reptilian bias, it's really good to be aware of this. So 3 primary moods. And Summer, where are you?
Oh, okay.
Great. Will you time me just to make sure, let me know how the timing is going so I don't go over and please. All right. The first mood is the victim mood. Oh, I'm never a victim. I'm very powerful. That's not true. Everybody's a victim. Everybody falls in and out of the victim mood. We can't help it. When we're scared, that's where we go. The victim mood sounds like this. I'm at their mercy. They have all the power. What else would a victim mood be like?
Woe is me.
What, I'm sorry?
Woe is me.
Woe is me?
I could not get parking. My kid was annoying me in the morning. Everybody's
How do you spell woe? W-O-E.
But you know what? Any frightened, you do it.
Good. What else? What else is a victim mood?
Frightened.
Yeah. Well, frightened can be. I think it's what happens to you when you become frightened. So nervousness would be in the victim. How about blaming? Right? I love it when people say, you know, the economy stinks and there are no jobs. Anytime you hear that, this person is in the victim mood. And so, just so you know, when you're in the victim mood, you actually can't perform well. So it's actually neurologically not possible. The brain shuts down because it's scared. It's in its reptilian survival mode. And so it gets really small and really focused, and it's really hard to do well in an interview. Any symptoms of victimness when you walk in? Do you know what that would look like?
Crouching.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe kind of defensive or
Ooh,
kind
good.
of off-put.
Good. Defensive.
Bad posture.
Hunched over, maybe. Anybody sweat?
Yes.
So they're sweating. How about heavy breathing? Are you sweating right now? Even just
No,
talking?
not really. Earlier
Are
in my
you nervous?
training.
Are you in
You're making me
the?
so nervous right now.
No, yeah. I mean, so we all have our own responses to being in the victim mood. So when we walk in and we're feeling this way, it's really hard to relax and enjoy the process. So what's particularly interesting is for the LGBT and transgender community, we have a lot of bullying in our past, a lot of isolation, a lot of trauma. All that gets re-triggered when we feel like we are powerless, right? So that comes into the subject also. So victim mode. That's a tough one to get past when you are in the interview. Okay, the next one is hyper responsible. Hyper responsible is somebody who just sits there and is thinking, okay, what am I supposed to say and how am I supposed to answer it? And I memorize every single thing. I talked to Sherry beforehand, she prepared me, and I think I memorized every answer from every possible system, but I'm not really sure. And what if they ask me the wrong question? What if I can't answer? That's hyper responsible. It sounds like it's victim, but it's not, because these people are so prepared. They've actually memorized all the answers, and they're actually incapable of coming from a place of spontaneity. Does that sound familiar for anyone? Oh, not me, I don't do that. I do that. I did that. So I'm actually sort of in the hyper-responsible third thing here. Like I wrote notes, right? And I'm winging it at the same time. And I'm a little bit down here because I'm still sweating at the same time. Can't tell if it's hot or if I'm nervous, but I'm happy. So that's all I know. So hyper-responsible, and these are people who over-prepare. They're really conscious about where to put their hands. They're kind of stiff and defended, and they're serious. When you're really hyper responsible, she's like, when I'm really hyper responsible, you can't act. It's really, again, it's hard to notice facial expressions. It's hard to be able to take cues. It's hard to be in the moment. And it's hard to get a feel. And by the way, when you're in the victim and the hyper responsible mode, it is really hard for you to be sitting back and saying, do I actually want to work for these people? Remember, it's a two-way street. You have just as much power, if not more sometimes, than the person who's interviewing you. If you're a victim and hyper-responsible, it is really hard for you to be accurately looking at the environment and knowing what's going on. Okay. Now, the third place is grace. We also call this flow. But mostly, grace is about being in present time. So when we are in grace, what do you think grace would be like, being in the flow? What would that look like? Any ideas?
Relaxed.
Yeah.
Spontaneous.
This is about the only place where confidence can exist.
Lighthearted, maybe?
Yes. Do you know why?
No.
Because you're in the moment. This is present time. So, when we're victims in our job interviews, we're stuck in the past. We're being triggered. We're reactivated. We're in a reactive mode. So we're actually in the past. We're actually not in the present. When we're hyper-responsible, where do you think we are? Future. Very good. Right? So you're not actually still not in the room. You're in the future. When we are in grace, we are present. Now, victim is also our youngest self. Right? Because it was true when we were younger, we really were victims. That is absolutely the truth. And sometimes we bring that little girl, that little boy, right into the interview with us. That's our youngest place. Hyper-responsible is sort of the nervous parent that we had, that we bring into the interview with us. So grace and flow and freedom exist right here. I want to say that grace does not mean sitting at the table and going, oh. That's not what it looks like. It means being fully present to what is happening in the room. So it's in grace that you can tell, are these people I want to work with? And it's in grace that we begin to break down the barriers. There's less bias. If you've gotten that far, and you can start to really connect with people as human beings, one-on-one and create a bonding, that's going to happen in present time, because you're not in your victim space, you're not so far ahead, you're right there with the person. And you get to check your own biases, right? So is this person wearing a tie? I hate people who wear ties. Is this person wearing boots? I don't know. Black pants? What does she think? And it makes me look bad. So you get to check your own bias at the door too, because in all of these, you're bringing your own bias into the room. But the truth is that we can break barriers in interviews when we are fully present in ourselves, and employers have a chance to really get to know who you are. This is where bonding takes place. Everybody's out of their reptilian brain, and they're actually trying to find out, who is this person? Do I like them? Will it fit? Remember, employers hire who they like. So how do you get to grace? Especially, anybody like sit in their car before a job interview and just go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Or on the bar, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Then Sherry told me that I was going to be at the being grace, damn it, I can't get to grace. So I don't mean to put more pressure on you, but here's the deal. It's actually quite easy. There are 3 things that can get you into grace spots. The first one is breathing. As everybody takes a collective sigh. Breathing. I'll tell you why. When you breathe, when you take at least 8 to 10 breaths, the body knows it's safe. When we're doing this, we're taking shallow breaths and our adrenaline is flowing and we're starting to sweat, the brain actually thinks that we're in danger, that there's something wrong, and begins to shut down or begins to get ready for an attack. So when you breathe, you're letting the body know you're okay. Breathing. So before going into an interview, you want to breathe. The second thing is compassion. And not for the employer, but for yourself. Neurological research has shown that self-compassion will change neural pathways quicker than anything else. It's the story that we tell that causes our suffering. It's the story that we tell that causes our suffering. So when we have self-compassion, like, okay, I get it, this is important, pay my bills, I really want this job, right? That's understandable. But when you actually have, like, you better do well, you better do this, you better show up, that does not help. Self-compassion, okay, we're gonna get through this, we're gonna take it one step at a time. We're gonna be present, we're gonna pay attention to who's interviewing us, we're gonna try to figure out if we wanna be in this place, and we're gonna show them who I am. Okay. The third thing is, and it's easier actually, is curiosity. Curiosity will pop you up from victim to grace in a second. It sounds like this. Wow, I'm really nervous. Why am I nervous? That's all it takes. Huh, it's interesting, I'm nervous. I wonder what the employer would be like. I wonder what the building, I wonder what the culture's gonna be like. I wonder if I'm gonna like them. Curiosity will bump you away. So next time. Now, is this changing the bias of the employer? I don't know. But it's allowing an opportunity for bonding to take place, and for people to start connecting and looking each other in the eyes, and to really see who you are, and to get past preconceived images. And all those preconceived notions are going to be alive and present in the victim box for both people. And you can't control what your employer or potential employer is going to be thinking. One of the ways to remain curious in the interview, by the way, and to also hopefully form bonding, is to ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions sound like this: who, what, where, when, why, and how. It's a way to engage people. And I don't care if you are talking to the receptionist. So just so you know, the minute you get onto the campus of the interview, the building, if you're in the bathroom, if you're talking to the receptionist, your interview has started. You never know who you are sitting next to in the bathroom. And don't think for a second that that receptionist does not go back and says, you know, he's a really nice guy. Or, what an idiot. You'd be surprised how often the receptionist has the final say. So, let's talk about some more tips. Number one, try to remember that employers need you also. So, did you ever see the David Copperfield, the movie where the boy goes in and he says, please, sir, may I have some more? What was it? Oliver, thank you. Okay, so that's how we walk into these interviews often, like this: please, sir, please, ma'am, just one job, right? Right? Am I on target? Yeah, right. Okay, so when we go in that way, we're in the victim box, but now you know that, right? Okay. It's actually the employer, most of the time, is not thinking about it. The employer is really curious about who you are. If they're a good interviewer. There's a lot of ifs here. Okay. Do your due diligence before you go to an interview. Research the company. Find out who, if it's possible, find out who's doing the hiring. You can always check with the Human Rights Council. They have a pretty good idea of who are good employers, who are gay-friendly, LGBT-friendly. They can provide you with information. Have you ever heard of Glassdoor.com? Yeah. Okay, so Glassdoor has company reviews. And that can be really helpful, really useful. See if you can go on LinkedIn and connect with people who currently work in the company that you are going into. Find out if you can have coffee with this person, tea with this person, try to get a feel. Many corporations, not small businesses, but some corporations actually have, I'm going to forget the name of these groups, so they're actually, I know that Chevron has it. They actually threw an LGBT career day for us 2 years ago, I think. Yeah. They have specialty groups in their organizations that promote LGBT rights, topics, representation. They do African Americans also. So it's a great company in that respect, even if they are polluting our world and our water still. They are trying, actually. It was really kind of hard to hate them afterwards. There's also the Golden Gate Business Association in San Francisco. It's a gay chamber of commerce. So I would encourage you to go maybe to the meetings, or at least to talk to them about potential gay-friendly businesses. We can still aggravate the reptilian brain, and by that I mean no smoking before an interview. If they smell it on you, it triggers. It triggers a preconceived notion. I have employers who smell cigarette smoke on candidates and immediately think, up, health risk. You're gonna spend all their time, all their breaks gonna be outside, socializing.
Depressed.
I'm sorry?
Maybe they're depressed.
They,
Never know.
you can't control the story, right? You can't control the story, but the cigarette smoke will trigger that. You know what else will trigger that? Perfume. Don't wear perfume or cologne. That will also trigger a bias.
But
Yeah.
wear deodorant.
Huh?
But wear copious amount of deodorant,
Deodorant's good.
especially if you sweat.
Yeah, deodorant's good. That's
Thank
true.
you.
That's true. Hopefully you'll be feeling more in a race place and won't sweat quite as much. And it does happen. Yes, that's actually good. So, the whole purpose of this conversation is to at least, we cannot control the biases of the people, of anyone, right? We know that. But we can control how we show up to events. And we can try to set the stage for bonding and friendship and potential connection to happen. And I believe that that breaks down boundaries. I really do. And I think it breaks barriers when people can show up who they are and people can see who you are past everything. And also, you get to see who these people are. So, we'll have a chance to ask questions. What I wanted to say is, allow people to fall in love with you. Allow people to fall in love with you, and allow employers to fall in love with you. And give yourself a chance to fall in love with them also. Thank you.
All right, so Sherry set the roadmap for overcoming perceived bias during job interviews. We're going to listen to two very different stories from two speakers now, and I don't want to give too much away because I think that you'll fall in love with them. So our first speaker is Dr. Erica Anderson. She is just a little bio. The interim dean of graduate studies at John F. Kennedy University.
So I'm a psychologist for 35 years, long enough to form some judgments about some of these things. So I want to tell you a couple things. Also, I'm a professor, so it's kind of challenging to stimulate you and get you going about a few things in 15, 20 minutes and then stop. Because I'm used to having a couple of hours where I throw a lot of stuff at you and confuse you and amaze you and stupefy you, and then you have a break and then you come back and then we put it all back together. So we're not going to do that. But I'm gonna also borrow a page from the book that many of you know of, which is the 12-step programs where you tell your story, so to speak, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I'm a transgendered woman, and I'm going to tell you my recent job stories in a very compressed way, and more later at another time perhaps. So leave it to the psychologist to react to the title. Okay, so perception, perceived bias. Okay, so perception. Perception has a long history in psychology, as you know. So my reaction was perception versus reality. Okay, so perceived bias or real bias. Not perceived bias, but real bias. Okay. Also, you should know, and again, relating to Sherry's point of view, we now know from neuroscience that perception and reality are not mutually exclusive. Okay, they're not binary. Borrow another term that some of you know. What is perceived and what is real are somehow not completely distinct and different from one another. And the perceptions that one has are also colored by many of the things that Sherry invoked, who we are, our history, and so forth. Bias, do we always know when it occurs? As she counsels us, no, we don't. We don't know when it's occurring often. Can we presume that it is occurring often? Yes. Why? Okay, I'm going to invoke a little psychology for a moment. Well, from evolutionary psychology, just to backfill from the science, some of what Sherry is talking about. from evolutionary psychology, we know that the reptilian brain does tell us that the other is different than us. Okay? And this has been true throughout human history. And there is tribal differences, there are cultural differences and so forth, but it is deep in our brain that we know this. It's the same part of the brain, as she suggests, that is related to fight and flight. Okay, so it's adaptive, which is why it's evolutionary. It's served us as a species to know who the other one is, and the other being different from us. In terms of human development, we also need to know that recognition of the other goes really deep in terms of our development and our brain, because recognition of the other is a part of our development as a human being. When we're a baby, we begin to recognize the other way before we have words. Okay, so it's, again, deep in the brain, deep in the deeper structures of the brain. Before we have language, we have recognition that there is an other. Okay, so we have both a history as a species and individual development. We understand that there's self and other, and basically we're prompted, as she says, to be afraid. At least to recognize and possibly be afraid of the other. So it's no secret then that prejudice has been present throughout human history, has it not? In fact, if you think about it, in my lifetime, Civil Rights Act, 1964. Civil Rights Act in 1964. Do we still have prejudice? Yes, we do. Okay. So it's illegal, okay, and one of our speakers is an attorney, and she's going to tell us a lot about some legal and ethical issues. But it doesn't mean that prejudice doesn't still occur. It's masked, it's hidden, it's filtered, okay, it's subverted in a different way, but it's still there. So we're subject to bias and prejudice all the time, and depending upon how different we are from the other, and how insecure we may be with that other, our individual characteristics, we're going to be worried about it, and maybe we're going to be subject to it. Okay, so I told you I was going to tell you a little bit about me. So I'm one of these unique people who has spent most of her life as a man and transitioned and became a woman. Okay, now how did that happen? Well, that's a long story which would distract us for the moment. But suffice it to say that a person I know very well, Eric Anderson, decided that he was going to transition, having been transgendered for many of the years of his adult life, and come to terms with it finally in such a way as to determine to go ahead and transition. So, being a professor at a Catholic university, he did some calculus. And the calculus was related to this threat issue. Bad place to transition. Okay, got to get out of this place. This is not a helpful place to do what I need to do for my life. So by the way, I'll do this consistently. Flip back and forth between first person and third person. Forgive me. You'll catch on. Okay, so Eric, having resources, having studied transgender issues and all kinds of related things, realized he needed expert advice about how to do this, was seeing a psychologist, had other doctors, gender doctors to rely on, and sought some advice. Okay, well, if he's going to transition publicly in society in every way, what to do? Okay. Big issue, yeah. Okay. So, happened to be a part of a professional group that's worldwide, transgender group that's worldwide, World Professional Association for Transgender Health. Lots of psychologists, lots of doctors, lots of public policy people, lawyers, all kinds of stuff. Put it out on the listserv through another person, because you don't want it coming back to you, right, publicly. So put it out on the listserv. Okay, here's the situation. Professional person, midlife. That's generous. and wants to transition. And what should she do? Okay. Lots of responses, none of them consistent. Everything from tell everybody right up front, put it on your resume, et cetera, to don't tell us so until you have a signed contract that you're going to transition. Okay? And everything in between, all versions of gray in between. Okay? So what to do? Make your own judgment. So the judgment was apply for jobs and sort of figure it out. Mind you, Eric was pursuing transition during the job search process, albeit fairly challenging itself, right? So, so job applications decided New York, California. Surprise, surprise. Not the state in which Eric resided at the time, which happened to be another eastern state. I'll leave it alone for now. Oh, by the way, although I am at JFKU and I am currently the interim dean of the graduate school, I'm here personally, okay, just so you know. So I'm not speaking obviously on behalf of JFK, but I am going to talk about JFK in just a couple minutes. So one of the positions that I applied for, or Eric applied for, was to be the chair of the doctoral program in clinical psychology. Now mind you, Eric had been the chair of a program or a department currently, but it was not psychology, it was healthcare management. So arguably this was a bit of a stretch, even though he'd been a psychologist for many years and lots of other qualifications. But nevertheless, made the final cut through a telephone interview and was asked to come to California to interview for the job. Okay. Now, mind you, Eric is coming for the job interview. All of Eric's credentials are as Eric, a man. Coming to the job, hoping to be hired, expecting to start as Erica. So how do you finesse that? Okay? So I'm going to tell you. So I came for a fairly extensive round of interviews, which took all day. The first half of the day was all the faculty in that program, 12 psychologists, half a day. Imagine a group interview with 12 psychologists for 3 hours. You want to do it for me? You know? Okay, so first half of the morning was kind of perfunctory and all that. Second half, they got to the point. Okay? And the elephant in the room became suddenly brightly lit, and this group of 12 people, 3 of whom are out lesbians, 2 of whom are African American, one of whom lives in a wheelchair due to cerebral palsy, okay, differently abled person, and 2 Latinas. Okay, so here's this group. Actually, 9 women and 3 men. Okay, right, 9. So they're interviewing Eric, a psychologist, a white guy. Okay, so second half of the morning, they turn to Eric, and somebody must have gotten this short straw to ask this question. But the question posed was, how can you, a white male, presume to represent this group and our focus on multicultural competence? Ooh. Zing, right? Now, my heart dropped, okay? I'm the very first person now because it's the reptilian brain. So my heart dropped and I thought for a moment, okay, am I going to come out right now to this group in this interview? Or am I going to, as I had sort of planned, come out to the dean in a private interview? It was going to be my boss. And I quickly decided if I come out now, that will derail the conversation, make the focus of the conversation the fact that I'm transgender, and that's what we will talk about as opposed to job qualifications and my capabilities that are needed for the job. So here's what I said. You curious? What did Eric say? How can you, a white male? I gulped and I said, well, I said, if you knew me, if you really knew me, you would know why I am totally committed to the mission of this program and this university. And they didn't follow it up. But they really were curious. What did that mean? What did that mean? Yeah. So I had them. I'm curious. So later in the day, I had hoped to talk with her sooner, but later in the day, I had my chance to talk with the dean privately. Met the president of the university, the provost, all the other program chairs, etc. And unfortunately, the dean interview was the last interview of the day. So we go in her office. She has a little conference room, little conference table. I put down on the table one more letter of reference for Dr. Erica Anderson, who was known to a friend who was also a physician and who had seen her function in professional settings as a woman psychologist. And I put that face down on the table. And after the dean went through a few questions and was curious about this and going through her usual process, she paused, and I thought, okay, here's my opening. And her name is Ruth, and I had gotten to know her on the telephone before that day. So I said to her, Ruth, there's something I've got to say before we go much further. And as straight as this, I said, I'm transgender. If you hire me, you're getting Erica. And she looked at me, and her face, like, her eyes, got real wide, and she tilted her head back up. I'm not kidding you. She tilted her head back up like this, all the way to the ceiling. Like that. Like that, mind you. How many times in an interview does somebody go like that? Okay? So she goes like this. Wow. Didn't see that coming. And then she tilts back down and she looks at me and she breaks into a big smile. And she said, that's cool. And I knew from that point on, whether I got the job or not, it was going to be fine. Okay? Long story short, got the job.
Woo!
Welcome to California.
Exactly. Now, I still had to come out to the faculty because they had only interviewed Eric and they didn't know yet. Okay, so after I signed the contract, and this was the advice of the dean, then we'll meet with the faculty and we'll tell them and so forth. So Erica showed up for work in July of 2012, and you have before you one and the same. So I transitioned 2 years ago, started the job, and crazy as it sounds, in less than 2 years I've had 2 senior positions at the university. I was the PsyD chair for the first year, and then I was asked by the president to serve as the interim dean. So what does that tell you? Arguably I've had a successful transition. And it hasn't been always easy, but I will tell you that at JFK, credit to JFK as an institution, and to my colleagues and to being in California, thank you, California, I've been able to be successful both professionally and personally. I'm very happy to have experienced that. Now, I will tell you that I'm very well aware that I am not a typical person who goes through this process, and when I like to say, when you've heard one transition story, you've heard one. Okay? Because they're all different, we're all different, and the challenges that each of us has are not all the same. But I will tell you, I've had my own experiences of being marginalized, of having microaggressions, all of that. And I'm eager to, as I was saying to Sherry earlier, be of help to our community going forward, because I think there is a great need for people who understand what it's like on various sides of this. And having hired lots of people myself over the years, I've probably hired directly or indirectly 1,000 people. I was an executive in a number of companies and built some companies where we had no employees, and then we had 250 employees. So I know a little bit about what it's like to hire people as an executive, and I'm hoping that I can do that in companies over time. I'm rotating out of the dean job. Thank you. And going to be back to being a professor, or on to being a professor, I guess is the better way to say it. And I'm looking forward to that. I had my pick of places where I could be in the university, which was pretty nice. So I chose to office in Berkeley. I've been in Pleasant Hill for my tenure to date, but I'm going to go to the Berkeley campus of JFK, which is, it's Berkeley. So I'm in my dean costume today. At some point in the future, when you see me again, I probably won't be in the dean costume, and I might look more like other professionals that you see day to day, and that suits me just fine. So that's what I have to share with you today, and I look forward to hearing our next speaker and sharing with you a little bit later.
So, last but not least is Mary Grace Guzman, who I could talk about for hours, but I won't, because she can talk about herself for a little bit of time. She is an attorney, an ethics attorney at Fishkin Slater in Pleasant Hill. Walnut Creek. I always get, it's right there on the border. And Tricia works with her, so. And Mary will talk about her experience with job interviews and her experience in the interview process. So, Mary?
Thank you for inviting me, Summer, and thank you for coming. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history about myself. Okay, I'm just going to describe my history. Went to 2 different high schools. First one in Southern California, second one out here, private Catholic school. I'm sure you can guess which one locally. And yes, Carmelet. So then from there, graduated with a 3.9, went on to UC Berkeley, graduated with a 3.29 overall, graduated within my major a 3.9. So did really, really well, okay? Had some jobs, then moved forward. Got into a very, very good law school in Santa Clara, top 100 law school. In between there, I was diagnosed with a non-visible learning disability, ADHD and dyslexia. Had my daughter on my own, who is now 12. Right before I get accepted into law school, she has her first seizure and was diagnosed with epilepsy, which meant as a single mom, and I needed support, could not go down to Santa Clara to go to school. Had to live up here and commute. It's 102 miles round trip, just so you know. I drove that, okay? I was broke. I accepted government assistance to help me get through law school. There's a program called the Department of Rehab. So for those of you who have learning disabilities or other sorts of disabilities, it's out there. Accepted assistance through that, accepted WIC, applied for food stamps. I did all of those things, okay? All while going to law school. Single mom, sick kid. About the second year of my law school year, I was told it wasn't if, it was when she was gonna have brain surgery. So now I'm looking at brain surgery, epilepsy, commute, single mom, poor, living in Pleasant Hill, first generation law student. I was first generation here. My father's an immigrant. So there's a lot there, right? There's a lot of pieces of who I am. But I went to UC Berkeley. I went to Santa Clara. And I'm in law school. I will tell you, even in law school, my history was the first thing my friends saw. They did not see the UC Berkeley They saw the fact that I'm a single mom and that I had other obligations. I had people who outright did not want to be my partner. Okay, and this is just the mini lawyers, pre-lawyers. These aren't the actual lawyers, okay? So I knew from the get-go that I was up against a lot to get a job. We're not even, and this was 2006, 2007, before the economy tanked, so we're not even talking about how bad it got. So I sat with my professor and I said, you know, I had done some mentoring interviews with other attorneys, and basically they were letting me know, you're gonna have a tough time, and why are you an attorney? Why would you even think of being an attorney? Because no one is an attorney. What happens to most attorneys, especially women, is that they go to law school, they get married, meet their love of their life while in law school, they get married, they have children, and usually they leave their career. Or if they do get divorced and have families, it's while they're in the career. They don't enter into the career as a single mother, okay? So I asked my professor, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna get a job? This is what I'm dealing with. And I already know that there's all these perceived biases. And my professor said something that for me was magical, and it gave me, it wasn't, at the time, she felt it wasn't helpful, but for me, it opened a million doors. And what she said was, I don't know, and it's gonna be hard for you, okay? Not very comforting words. She said, but you're gonna have to be creative. And she gave me at that moment permission to be creative, okay? So I knew going into this, unlike my classmates, I knew going into this that my shot at having a job was difficult. I couldn't do all the things that I needed to do to build my resume. It wasn't due to grades, because I graduated in the top 50% of my class. So that means that there were people who didn't have half of what I had, who did worse than me, who failed out of law school. I managed to continue it despite the fact that I was dealing with all of these things. Despite the fact that this looming stress of the possibility of my child having brain surgery, which is no small potatoes, right, was there. Luckily, she didn't have brain surgery. We figured it out. It was a food allergy, got her off of dairy, got her off of anti-seizure meds, and she's totally healthy and taller than me, okay? But we were dealing with this. This was my reality. At that same time, though, I was, me being given this license to be creative, I started thinking about, what was I learning here? I have a child, and I'm advocating for her. I'm dealing with doctors, I'm dealing with hospitals, insurance companies, okay? Her school almost kicked her out of the school because of her health issues. All of those things, I was an educational advocate, I was a medical researcher, I was a health advocate. I could list all of those skills that I had. And so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna add these into my resume, okay? And I figured either people are gonna accept them or they're gonna not. Then the economy tanked, okay? 2008 hit, and I can tell you that it hit attorneys hard. I have lots of friends who either had jobs and suddenly lost them. I had friends who didn't have jobs who couldn't find jobs. So now you're looking at, and I'm not just talking about from Santa Clara, I'm talking about the top 10 law schools. Those people, Harvard, Berkeley, Stanford, all of those people did not have access to jobs. So now, instead of competing against a certain type of student, I'm now competing against the best of the best with all of this baggage, without a good resume, and all of these things, okay? So what did I do? Remember, I have this license now, one, to practice law, but more importantly, I was given the license to be creative and think out of the box. So I decided I'm gonna do what attorneys used to do, which was start my own practice. And that's what I did. I did it a little bit differently. I knew that I needed, one, to know how to practice law, but I also needed to run a business. And a lot of law firms fail because they don't know, and lawyers fail because they don't know how to run a business. So I went to a nonprofit, we used to be out here, called the Women's Initiative for Self-Employment. They're now out in out in Oakland. And went there and I asked for help. And they accepted me. I cried the day that I got accepted. It meant as much to me as getting my law license, because it finally was a door opening. And I learned how to run a business. And every time I had an opportunity, I knocked on that door and I asked. On top of that, whenever they asked for help, I always gave back. And that was another thing that another mentor that I had met along the way had said is, if you have an opportunity, say yes. And that's what I've done. I've always, when people have said for me to speak, volunteer, whatever it is, even though I wasn't making any money, and I can tell you, we were broke. I mean, my daughter and I, living with mom and dad is no fun. With a kid and not having a job talk about a personal resume. That's a personal resume that you can't, it's hard to get rid of. But I always said yes. I volunteered. I did said as many yeses as I could given what I was dealing with, okay? And that opened a lot of doors. As a result, through the Women's Initiative, I met actually our office manager here, and we were in a class together. And it turned out she was working for a law firm. And a little bit of a backstory, while I was in law school, you have to take a class. Everyone has to take it. It's called Professional Responsibilities. And I'll never forget this. I was reading these cases, and they read kind of like People magazine. They really are a gossip rag for lawyers because you get to learn all the horrible things that people do to lose their license. It's great. You're reading, I'm not kidding, you're reading about sex and drugs and stealing money, and I'm not, this is what you're reading, right? And I'm sitting there reading this and I'm thinking, how do you become that lawyer? I want to be that lawyer. I literally thought that because they had to have had a lawyer because there's a case written about this. But who are these lawyers? I had no idea. Well, little did I know that there's a law firm in Walnut Creek. Okay, so my friend Trisha and I were in this class together, and we were both planning our businesses, and she was telling me who she worked for. She's like, I need to introduce you to my boss. Eventually, I finally meet her boss, Jerome Fishkin, and talk about weird interviews. Okay, I had had interviews where this guy looked at me and he said, you have all this space in your resume. What's going on here? And I was told to tell the truth. I said, well, I was a single mom and I was dealing with this, and that. But I always took a positive spin, and I said, but I learned a lot from this. And I listed all the things I did for my daughter. And this particular person said, so other than parenting, what have you done? Like, okay, that job, I can tell you that much. So I go in to meet with Jerome Fishkin, and I'll tell you right now, Mr. Fishkin has a nationally known reputation. There's a recent case that happened. There was a gentleman who was undocumented who wanted to become a lawyer. He passed the bar, and our firm took him on as a pro bono client and just recently won, and now went all the way up to the California Supreme Court, and he was based on a lot of different things, partly my boss's work, partly a statute that was passed by our legislator that allows undocumented individuals to come to California, take the California bar, and become licensed attorneys. That was my boss who did this, okay? So I walk in, I come in a suit, ready with my resume and a writing sample, and I hand it to him, and he is dressed in a Hawaiian t-shirt, jeans, and tennis shoes. This is a very, very famous attorney who everybody knows, okay? And he looks at, I hand it to him, and he says to me, I don't want to look at this. Jerry, do you have a license? I said, yes. Okay. And that was it. I got hired as a contract attorney, and about a year and a half later, he made me an offer, and I've been with the firm now for a year. 2 weeks ago was my anniversary. Okay, very weird. In my line of work, what I do is I counsel both attorneys and law students on things that are very difficult. With the law students, they're a lot more analogous to those who are applying for jobs. These are people who basically, and I say this out of complete love and compassion, they committed crimes of stupidity, okay? We all had a period of time in our lives, right? From whenever, 12 years old, because you actually have to report stuff that you did when you were 12 years old if it was criminal, all the way up until you decided the day that you wanted to become an attorney. Okay, you have to report all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden they realize, holy crap, I need to tell the bar about every little thing I did and account for time from the time I was 18 until the time I applied for this.
it's a lot. And so what I do is I counsel them on how to do this. So it is analogous to having your own perceived biases, because this is someone who's going to open up your history and they're going to make a judgment as to whether or not you are worthy of becoming an attorney or whether you're not worthy of becoming an attorney. And there's two things that our firm really tells all of our clients. Okay, number one is everyone loves a redemption story, okay? And number two, people can handle the truth better than they can handle a lie, okay? So with myself and my own history, I always walk in knowing who I am. I'm a single mother with a non-visible disability to a child who has a non-visible disability, and I come from a first generation everything, and I come from poverty. That makes me who I am. It also makes me special, and it also makes me quite good at what I do. Because when my clients call me up, and they think that I'm this, they're calling up a nationally recognized law firm who's run by an attorney who's nationally recognized, who's done crazy, amazing things. And they're having to open up their horrible garbage to me, right? A lot of times I usually stop them and say, wait a minute, let me tell you a little bit about myself. And I tell them my story, and now all of a sudden my story that was once a liability, and other lawyers saw it as a liability, is a complete asset. Because it calms my clients down, and it makes it easy for them to tell me their horrible stuff. And we laugh about it. Sometimes I call them a knucklehead. Sometimes I use expletives to describe what they did. And they're cool with it. That's just the way we interact. But that's how I've learned to use my own issues and even their biases to calm them down. And I think that when you all go into your job interviews, really, you don't want to work for someone who is going to not appreciate who you are. And if you just throw it out there, yeah, some of them are going to be like that other attorney and be like, yeah, other than that, what have you done? Or some of them are going to be like my boss, who's like, really, I don't care what kind of great stuff you did. Because you know what? There's a lot of great people out there who have beautiful resumes who really aren't as talented or really aren't great people. And so it's really ultimately finding that right fit and being committed to that right fit. And it's not easy. It's time consuming. It is painful because I can tell you I was broke can be, and I had to do things that I never thought I'd do. Accepting public assistance is no fun, okay? Going into a grocery store as a 35-year-old woman with a child and taking food stamps to pay for your food is an embarrassing and horribly demeaning experience, but I did it. But it has enabled me, those experiences have enabled me to relate to people in ways that I never thought I could have, and is probably my greatest asset as an attorney now. So, my basic advice is being true to yourself and really understanding what is ugly in your past and learn how they helped you grow and how they can be assets into your career path of your choice. So thank you. Okay, so those are all three of our speakers.
I just want to say thank you all for sharing your expertise and sharing your stories. And, the Rainbow Center, I wanted to finish. We have a mission statement and we have a vision statement as an organization. And our vision statement is that we envision a society that embraces acceptance, safety, and equality for all, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. I thank you all for helping us move towards our vision statement. We all know we're not there as a society, even in California, right? And so hopefully when we come together like this and we really provide each other support, that's what we can all help each other move toward. So anyway, thank you all for being here. Please stay and please socialize and please come back. That's it.
Well, then why did you say you weren't?